Well, happening now, Chautauqua County's health director says she expects COVID spread to increase during reopening. The details on that. Plus, Congressman Tom Reed says more dollars may be needed to aid farmers.
Well, another fantastic weather day is on the way, and if you like this weather, more of it is on the way. I've got the full forecast next as the news at noon starts right now.
Live and on demand, this is WNY News Now.
And thanks for joining us for WNY News Now. I'm Justin Gould. One of Chautauqua County's top health officials says increased rates of COVID-19 infection are likely as we progress throughout reopening. Chautauqua County Public Health Director Christine Schuyler, speaking during a morning press conference in Mayville yesterday, told reporters through antibody testing her staff has learned the virus is not as prevalent in county residents as originally thought.
So far, I can tell you we're only seeing a 2 to 3% positive rate in the antibody tests. So while it's not anything scientific to this yet, we don't really have enough data to say that. But to have that many people not showing antibodies makes us think that really COVID-19 has not been widely spread in our area. So another reason why we think we'll probably see increased rates of infection once we open up.
She continues to stress that residents who are sick should stay home and call their doctor to get a telemedicine exam. Furthermore, Schuyler advises those who have pre-existing conditions to continue to stay home as much as possible and take extra precautions when out in the community. She also urges citizens not to judge those who may not be wearing a mask because they could have a pre-existing health condition that prevents them from doing so. She says one of the easiest ways to protect those most at risk of COVID-19 is by wearing a cloth mask yourself when unable to maintain the 6 feet social distancing regulation. She says that a surge in cases this past weekend was due to people gathering prematurely. She is encouraging citizens to be smart about how they act during the reopening process. Well, yesterday, one new case of COVID-19 was reported in Chautauqua County. That case involves a young adult male. There's now a total of 54 cases with 13 of them active. Now, as of yesterday, 2 people recovered from COVID-19, bringing the recovery total to 37. There was no change reported in nearby Cattaraugus County. Well, President Donald Trump announced yesterday a $19 billion relief package for the farming industry, with $16 billion of that earmarked for direct payments to farmers. Nationwide, farmers have reported that they've had to dump excess milk and other products during this ongoing pandemic, and many are asking whether or not the relief package will be enough for them. Congressman Tom Reed tells us that he doesn't believe it will.
There's probably going to be a need for additional recovery dollars outside of that. But this is a step in the right direction, and it is a step that is necessary, especially when it comes to our dairy farmers. And so stay tuned as we go into phase 4, as I do believe there will be an ag portion of that bill because, as you've seen, all the impacts from dairy, meat, specialty crops, the international markets being shut down, the institutional demands associated with education and public operations that have ceased, that has had a very devastating impact on the farming economy.
Now that phase 4 is currently under debate in Congress right now. Well, this year's 4th of July fireworks display and celebrations in the village of Lakewood have been canceled due to COVID-19 concerns. The Lakewood Village Board announced the decision last week. The group previously postponed making any financial decisions with Zambelli fireworks because of uncertainty surrounding the outbreak. WNY News Now will continue to provide updates on the status of area events during this pandemic as soon as we learn of them. Well, with every state in the country reopening by the end of the week, Washington's focus yesterday was squarely on the U.S. economy recovering. President Donald Trump saying again he wants Americans to get back to work. But some states are still seeing more cases each day. Our Karen Kafa with this report from Washington.
President Trump with his cabinet Tuesday reiterating he wants Americans back to work.
We have to get back to work and we want to open up, and the people want to open up.
The president and vice president met with GOP lawmakers Tuesday about the next steps toward economic recovery. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell putting the brakes on another stimulus right now.
We need to assess what we've already done, take a look at what worked and what didn't, and we'll discuss the way forward.
Republicans have signaled openness to some additional measures, like liability protection for businesses against COVID-19 related lawsuits from workers and aid for state and local governments with budgets hammered by the pandemic response. By Wednesday, all 50 states will have taken steps toward reopening. Connecticut, the last.
This is the time to take a baby step, start cautiously reopening.
Those reopenings a big factor in the White House recovery equation. But Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin was pressed at a Senate Banking Committee hearing about workers' safety.
How many workers will die if we send people back to work without the protections they need, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Senator, we don't intend to send anybody back to work without the protections.
Despite the reopenings, as of Tuesday, at least 17 states were seeing daily case rates on the rise. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
Karen, thank you. The president again defended his use of the anti-malaria drug hydroxychloroquine to prevent COVID-19, dismissing warnings from the FDA and others which have said that the drug should only be used in hospitals or clinical settings because it could cause serious side effects or even death. Well, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says he's ready to get sports back up and running here in New York State. The governor announced this week that he wants major sports teams to plan on reopening without fans present. He says the games can still be seen on television.
We're now taking steps to do further reopening with fewer crowds. I'm very aggressive on encouraging sports teams to start and to operate without fans. This is more an economic calculus for different sports. Some sports franchises can make this work easier than others. It depends on the economics of that sport and how much is determined by selling seats in the arena or the stadium, etc. But to the extent they can start, I encourage them to start. The state will work with them to start.
Now, the governor is encouraging teams in every sport to begin making a plan. Well, we thank you so much for joining us here for WNY News Now as we continue to put facts over fear in our coverage of COVID-19 and the response here locally. Gotta say hello to Autumn. Hopefully you're doing well. Good to see Heather on the broadcast. Christine, thanks for joining us. Ann, Butch, Dan, and Crystal as well are here today. We thank you, and please let us know what you think about these stories and more. Any questions you have in the comments, and we'll do our best to get them answered as quickly and effectively as possible. Well, let's switch gears now and get a check of our First Defense weather forecast. One great thing, Dakota, is the weather today. It's absolutely gorgeous out there.
It is. If you liked yesterday, you're gonna like today. Here's a live look coming from the Warren City Bank in downtown Warren. I think we have a bug or something that's on this camera. I'm not sure what that is. 64, but look at this dew point of 30 degrees. The air is relatively dry, and you can actually see it here basically, in the satellite and radar composite. This right here is just high clouds up in the sky. The high clouds are too high up in the sky to basically have any rain to fall. So we've taken all the precipitation chances out for today and tomorrow. That is very rare. We don't usually do that. So a 0% chance of rain today and tomorrow. If it rains today or tomorrow, I'll pay each of you a penny if it rains tomorrow or today. 72 was the high yesterday. 49, of course, is the low this morning. 88 and 25 are in the record books for today. So there it is through the afternoon. Early high clouds thin for the afternoon. Bright sunshine, an A-plus day, but there will be a nice refreshing breeze. 67 on the hills, going to 75 across the lower elevations with a southeast wind. 10 to 15 miles per hour. Another great day tomorrow, but the holiday weekend might be a bit iffy. We'll talk about it in a few. Justin?
All right, Dakota, I'm always wondering where you're getting this money from. Last week you're telling people I'm going to give them $1, and now today you're handing out pennies?
It comes out of Andrew's budget.
Ah, I gotcha. Thank you,
Just
Dakota.
kidding.
Coming up next, New York State Senator George Borrello, you see there, joins us live to talk more about reopening our region. Stay with us as WNY News Now continues.
with coverage that matters. This is WNY News Now.
EagleZip.com is your local one-stop shop for all of your home and business computer needs. Located on Fluvan Avenue Extension, just outside of Jamestown, EagleZip.com sells and services all brands of desktops and laptops, as well as servers and network equipment for your business. All new computer sales include transferring your data from your old computer, plus a 2-year warranty. Call EagleZip.com today.
Stop by EagleZip.com today and let us make computers easy for you. When you're on the go, stay in the know by downloading the WNY News Now mobile app. Stay up to date on local news, weather, and sports that matter to you. Plus, subscribe to breaking news and weather alerts from the team that puts coverage first. In addition, watch news as it happens with the Southern Tier's only 24/7 streaming network. Download the WNY News Now app right now. It's free on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store.
You're watching WNY News Now, where coverage comes first.
And welcome back to WNY News Now. Phase 1 of reopening our area is now underway after Western New York met the state's metrics on Monday. Joining us on the show to discuss that reopening effort is State Senator George Borrello. Senator, great to have you here with us today. Thank you.
Good to be back, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Well, during the governor's briefing on Monday, when it was announced that Western New York would now begin reopening, what was the first thing that came to your mind?
First thing that came to my mind was not soon enough. This has been a struggle, particularly for those folks that have been so negatively impacted by the mismanagement of our unemployment system, the arbitrary and capricious manner in which certain businesses have been allowed to operate while others have not. So it's time for us to, start to carefully and safely reopen our economy, and this is the first step. So, as I said, couldn't happen soon enough.
Now, health experts continue to stress that COVID-19 is still very much a threat, but now that we are into that reopening process, what do you want to see happen here in our community?
First and foremost, I urge everyone to use common sense, and I talked about this yesterday on my Facebook Live. Respect others. Understand that this is still something that is a threat, and we need to act responsibly and safely. And that starts with using common sense. Understanding that even though you may have some questions as to whether or not PPP is effective, or it might be uncomfortable to wear some kind of a face covering. Understand that seems to be, at least from what we can see so far, having some kind of a positive effect on reducing the spread. As we've heard from the county officials, our rate of infection here is still very low. And despite that we saw a few extra cases over the weekend, when you consider it even just as a percentage of our population, we are still very low. And that in and of itself is a double-edged sword. It's good that we haven't had as many infections, but it also means that we still have people that are susceptible to infection. So exercise common sense. Please respect others. Please understand that there are those folks that are at high risk, and they need to be, protected. And we all have our own responsible actions to take in order for us to ensure that we don't slide backwards. And I don't think any of us want that.
Yeah. Now, you were a business owner prior to your work now in public service. What are those in the community who own those small stores and shops doing to now get through this process to open up?
Well, first and foremost, pretty much all of them are struggling, and some have been given status as an essential service of some kind. They're somehow involved in the supply chain of essential workers and providing those needs, and they are operating. Some of them are not operating at full capacity. They're only operating to produce products that are in need for that essential service. But now that we've entered phase 1, now we're seeing the expansion of that. And the small business owners that I've been in contact with, myself, my wife and I, we are in the restaurant business, and it has been a struggle. But we have gotten creative, as others have, and we've also worked together. It's great to see, in the case of the restaurant business, for example, we're on weekly Zoom calls with other restaurant owners throughout Western New York, sharing creative ideas and best practices, talking about how we can advocate on behalf of our industry, but also the big topic of discussion is how do we keep ourselves and our guests safe? In my role as a state senator, I'm speaking to businesses as to developing their reopening plans. This is something that Assemblyman Goodell and I pushed so hard for over a month ago when we said in our reopening plan, which, by the way, was largely adopted by the governor, and we said to those businesses, please start producing your own plans following those CDC and OSHA guidelines. We've since then worked with the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations to help provide templates and assistance. And it's really been a fantastic collaborative effort on the part of the small businesses and businesses in general throughout our region to help each other out and to ensure that that we stick together in this united effort. And I'm very proud of how we have stuck together, and it has had a meaningful and positive impact on the influence that we have on Albany.
Now, one big thing to note there is this reopening effort really came from you and Assemblyman Goodell here in Western New York, kind of pushing the envelope along, saying, okay, it's time, here's a plan, take this, let's do it. And now that plan really, especially with those economic development regions, are all across New York State. And there's no changing what has happened, but looking at what has happened, do you feel that we could have been in a better place than we are now if we all would have worked together as soon as COVID-19 has started and maybe not have been so reactive? Or do you feel that the measures that have been taken were right for the information that we had at the time?
You know, it's always easy to be the Monday morning quarterback, right? And I think that's what some people are doing. I think the governor, with all the unknowns that we had, he took the steps he felt were necessary to keep people safe, at least initially. But along the way, we have to say that some mistakes were made. And look, we are all operating as human beings, trying to do the best that we can. But at the same time, don't double down on mistakes. And that's where we are now. We have seen the continued, violation of our constitutional rights, both state and federal constitutional rights. We've seen things like the poor decision on nursing homes, sending COVID-infected patients back into nursing homes, which has now pretty much been outlined as a mistake. But yet now the governor wants to further burden those nursing homes with unnecessary testing of their employees and patients. That's going to be costly and could likely result in shutting many of these adult care facilities down. So let's not double down on bad mistakes. Let's admit those mistakes and move forward. I'm not going to second guess those decisions, but I will say that we do need to not compound those problems.
Is that what you're hearing from people in that town hall style Q&A that you took yesterday, where they were concerned with all that has happened? I mean, we've had now 3 protests just here in Jamestown speaking out about how people are upset because of these regulations.
You know, I'm hearing a lot of things from a lot of people, but first and foremost, I think people have to understand one basic thing. No one is advocating for us to just flip a switch and go back to doing things the way that we were prior to this pandemic. Even those plans that have been well thought out, all of them include continuing the safety measures, sanitizing, social distancing, wearing PPE, ensuring that we're controlling the situation as much as possible to reduce the risk. So the only people out there that are saying that that we're not doing those things are the people that are trying to be political about this. Yeah. So first and foremost, there will be a quote unquote new normal, if you will, at least for now. And what I am hearing from folks is the frustrations with the inequity that they see. You know, how is it that we can have literally thousands of people every day streaming into Walmart and Home Depot and other big box stores, and where we've not seen any flare-ups, but yet they can't go into a local jewelry store or florist. How can we see construction projects that were publicly funded, taxpayer-funded construction projects that never skipped a beat during this whole process, where again we didn't see any flare-ups? Those could continue on, but privately funded construction projects were shut down. So throughout this whole process, there has been an inequity, and that's what I'm hearing most from the business owners and the people that and not just business owners, but the people that that work and want to go back to work and want to ensure that their families for the long term are being taken care of. This whole idea of paying people more money on unemployment than they were making when they were working is certainly a short-term comfort for people. But most of the people that I know believe and understand that the risk to the businesses surviving long-term is great, and that's where we stand right now.
Now, today, your office announced, along with Assemblyman Goodell, that you're sending a letter to the governor asking him to support teacher-based education. Why is it important to keep that attention to teaching while balancing the importance of public safety, especially with children?
Well, I think everyone will admit that while we, out of an abundance of caution, we had to shut down our schools, with very little, actually no notice, and try to quickly pivot to what they call distance learning. And that is understandable because of the situation of the pandemic. But now the governor is looking at, as he's called it, reimagining education, with Bill Gates and talking about distance learning. And to me, that's a very short-sighted and myopic view of what our educational institutions do. They are not just the place where we disseminate information to children. It's also about the social skills they learn. It's about the community involvement. It's about a community that, especially in rural areas, that are oftentimes built around our school districts. So there's so much more to it than just the dissemination of information. Also, in our poor rural areas, and school is often the safest place for kids. What I've heard from so many educators, so many administrators, is that once this thing happened, they lost track of lots of students that they have not been able to get in touch with, whether it's phone or email or whatever. They have fallen off the radar, and those kids are at risk. And now we don't know their education essentially stopped. And on top of that, those at-risk kids, school was the safest place. Oftentimes, it was the only place that they got a decent meal. And while that's not the primary purpose of school, we cannot discount the fact that is an important role that schools now play. Also, when we start talking about rebuilding our manufacturing in base here in our area, which is critically important, part of that is the vocational education, the P-TECH, the BOCES, the applied sciences, and skilled trades. Those cannot be taught remotely. Those cannot be taught over a Zoom conference. So it's a very myopic view of what our education system is, especially in that K through 12 sector. And we just urge the governor to have a better, more holistic view of the importance of education and the importance of our educators and that one-on-one interaction with students that creates responsible citizens and people that are able to communicate with one another. It's just very, very important.
And there's so many topics that I think everything is affected by COVID-19 going forward. I would imagine if we went on the street, we wouldn't find one person who didn't have some sort of impact. Tourism, though, that's huge for our area. With events being canceled, just yesterday we learned the fair's postponed, still uncertainty with things like the Lucille Ball Comedy Festival here in Jamestown. Do you think that organizers maybe are being too cautious with making those decisions? And what is the future of that industry that you know fairly well?
Well, yeah, this is an industry that I'm involved with personally and have been for years in various forms. You've got this broad spectrum of events, from the small local festivals, the Festival of Grapes in Silver Creek in my home community that was started the year I was born, 1967, has for the first time in 53 years has been canceled. The Chautauqua County Fair, as you brought up, there's been countless festivals, fairs, concerts, and events. Chautauqua Institution's season has been canceled. And in some cases, I think that they were a little premature, but I do know, because I know this industry, that the tremendous amount of preparation that goes into these events. And that's really what this is about. If you have an event that's taking place in, say, July, you were planning for this since the previous July, and you were making commitments months and months in advance. We have to have deposits and down payments for things like vendors and talent, for the infrastructure that you're going to need to put that event on. So I understand that there is so much that goes into it. You don't just, open the gates one day and let people in. There's a tremendous amount of preparation, and that, as a result, is why many of these events, even going into the fall, have been canceled. But it also speaks to the importance of what are people going to do? And we have to recognize the fact that the things out there that people can do, going to parks, going to beaches, going to these open public venues, and being able to go out to restaurants, to take your boat out onto the lake or go fishing. Those are the things that people are going to turn to. And as a result, we have to ensure that those things are being done safely and responsibly.
And finally, we thank you so much for joining us here today. Only a couple minutes left. What message do you have for residents as we continue to move forward with this reopening, trying to do it as responsibly as possible, as you said?
As I've been saying, please exercise common sense and please respect others. I can't emphasize that enough. We cannot afford to slide backwards. And yes, although you may not perceive this as something that is a threat to you personally, please be conscious of the fact that there are others in those high-risk categories where this is a very real threat. Please understand that this inconvenience right now is likely going to be inconvenienced right now for the short term, is likely going to lead to a faster and more sustained recovery, and that is critically important. Our economy has been devastated throughout the nation, and especially here in the rural areas of New York. But there are positive things on the horizon, and that is the fact that I believe that people will now understand what we all know here in Western New York and the Southern Tier, and that this is a beautiful and wonderful and unique place to live. And I think people may rethink the idea of living on top of one another in crowded urban areas, and they may decide to move back here. So please work together with your friends and neighbors to keep this forward momentum, be safe, so we can in turn take advantage of what might be a renaissance for our region.
All right, New York State Senator George Borrello joining us on the show today. Sir, thank you. Always a pleasure to have you.
Same here. Thank you, Justin.
Now let's get a check of our weather forecast with Dakota.
Well, it was a nice day yesterday. 72 was the official high here in town. How about 77 in Dunkirk, 76 in Erie, and only 65 in Olean. You didn't warm up past the 60s yesterday. And yesterday, interesting, we had an earthquake south of Buffalo. It occurred just to the west of Hamburg, near the immediate Lake Erie shoreline. It was a magnitude 2.3. There's a small community in the town of Hamburg that is near the Lake Erie shoreline where essentially where this earthquake occurred. It occurred just before 5 o'clock yesterday. So wanted to do a quick segment about this. Earthquakes are not as uncommon around here as you might think. There's a set of fault lines that run right through the region. It's called the Clarendon-Linden faults. And even though that these fault lines often stay quiet and dormant, they can send little jolts, essentially every now and then. And so these fault lines are often the main cause of most of our seismic, essentially most of our seismic activity here. So those are the fault lines, which is what runs right through the region. Anyway, zone forecast inland areas today. Temperatures lower 70s. You keep on staring at the sun, Post Malone, and that'll be the story through the day. So blue skies smiling down at you now today. It's going to be a great day. Sunshine will continue to dominate through the day tomorrow. The weekend is looking mild, a little bit iffy though. We have put a couple rain chances in there, and again, the better chance for that's going to be down, especially near the state line. 61 right now as a noon hour. Southeast wind of 15, but look at this dew point of 26. The air is dry, so it's not going to rain. So we took all the rain chances out. High pressure ridge blocking still in control here. High pressure here, low here. It's blocking this low from going anywhere. So we're going to be on the warmer and drier side of that as we go throughout the next couple of days. So tonight, 36 to 43. There could be some frost developing by morning. This will likely be our last frost of the year. Again, we're right around the average date of our last frost now anyway. Get out and stargaze with a southeast wind averaging about 5 to 10 miles per hour. The next 7 days of your life are here on screen. 73 tomorrow. Sunshine continues. 71 on Friday. Small chance of a rain shower through the day. The weekend is looking nice and mild at this point. Small chance for scattered showers both Saturday and Sunday. Memorial Day looking mainly dry and warm. And look at Tuesday. We're up to 81 degrees, but with partial sunshine at times. News continues 24/7, pardon me, at WNYNewsNow.com. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.